Hi everyone, I'm Yana Smakula. Welcome back to My Favorite Things YouTube channel. In this video, I will show you how to create a Copic colored and heat embossed floral card on a dark background. This is the card we will be making in today's video. I like my cards to be simple yet dramatic, and I often achieve that drama with the help of dark colored cardstock. I also love to color with Copic markers, as I find coloring with Copics to be quick and efficient. It's one of my favorite coloring mediums. As you know though, coloring with Copic markers or any other alcohol markers is not possible on dark cardstock due to the nature of that coloring medium. Yet, on this card, it looks like I colored the flowers directly on the background. I achieved this look with the help of a simple trick, and I'll share that with you today. Let's get started. I'm going to begin by stamping this beautiful floral cluster from the My Favorite Things Floral Focus stamp set. On my finished card, the image is heat embossed and colored with Copic markers. It's best to never color with your Copic markers something that is heat embossed, as you run the risk of ruining the tip of your marker. Yet, I still love the look of a simple Copic colored image and heat embossed outline. I often forgo the rule of not coloring with Copics over heat embossing, and I just try to be very careful. But not everyone is like me, and you might not want to do this. So I'll show you a workaround so that you can still have this look, but not have to color with Copics over heat embossing. I'm going to stamp this image twice. First in black alcohol marker friendly ink, and then in clear embossing ink and heat set it with embossing powder. But I'm not going to stamp the image twice right away. First, I'm stamping it in black Copic marker friendly ink on white cardstock. I'm not being very careful here. I don't really care if my impression is perfect. It just needs to be good enough for me to see where I need to color. You also don't have to use black ink. You can use any other color of ink that you have as long as it's Copic marker friendly. I'm using a misti stamping tool for this, and you do need to use a tool like this or similar for this technique. Once I've stamped the image, I am keeping the stamp in the misti and I'm not removing it. It is very important to keep it as is to be able to later heat emboss the same image in the same spot on the same piece of paper. The next step is coloring. Here you can color however you like, using whatever colors you prefer. I've been enjoying using subtle shades of pink with some lively greens, so those are the colors I will be coloring with. Now, I'm not going to show you how I colored the entire cluster, but will rather show you just bits and pieces, as this video is really not about the coloring. It's about creating that dramatic look. The pink colors I'm using are RV34, RV11, RV10, and RV00. I'm following the stamped lines. I'm envisioning where the shadows are on the petals, where the highlights are, and I'm coloring the petals accordingly. I personally love to color. I find it very relaxing and therapeutic. To color the leaves, I'm using YG03, YG17, and YG63 colors. And again, I'm doing very simple coloring, nothing fancy here at all. I'm not spending too much time focusing on the details, as a lot of those details will be covered by heat embossing later. I went ahead and colored the rest of the images in the same way. Before I move to adding the heat embossed outline, I'm going to let the ink dry on my panel. This is a crucial step, and you want to make sure to either give the panel some time to dry or zap it with a heat tool. Next, I'm treating the panel with anti-static powder and using a dry paintbrush to spread that powder equally on the paper. I want to do a test run first to see if the paper is indeed dry, and I'm doing this by pouring embossing powder over the panel to see if any of the embossing powder sticks. None did, and so we're good to go. I've placed the panel back in my mini misti with the stamp positioned as it was before. I'm once again treating the paper with anti-static powder just to be on the safe side. Next, I've inked the stamp with clear embossing ink. I'm double checking to see if the panel is positioned correctly, and I'm stamping the image. Looks like it's a perfect match. I'm going to cover the panel with embossing powder. I love to use metallic colors for projects like this. And all that's left to do now is heat set the powder to melt it. So there you have it, a workaround the heat embossing and Copic coloring. You color first and heat emboss your image later. It's a bit more work, and there's always the risk that the image will not match up. I have had that happen to me before, but it's well worth the effort in the end. I cut the cluster out with the help of a coordinating die, and now I'm ready to plan my card. Now, I mentioned I love to use dark backgrounds for my projects. I picked a dark blue-green one for this card, and my plan is to foam mount the die-cut and colored cluster over it. Now, the cluster, however, because it was colored on white cardstock, has a white outline to it. The cluster on my finished card doesn't have any visible outline, and thus it blends with the background and just looks a lot better. It looks as if it was colored on the background itself. This is easily done with a simple trick that requires just a little bit more coloring. Now, I've looked through my Copic collection, and I have picked a marker that matches in color to the background paper that I'm using for my card. I'm going to use this marker to color the white outline of my die cut. If you are afraid to color next to the heat embossing, you might want to color it before the heat embossing step and even before you die cut the cluster. I'm okay coloring next to the heat embossing, so I really don't mind. As I begin coloring, you can see how that color edge instantly changes the look of the die cut. It's as if the colors I use to color the die cut become more vivid and they really come to life. That's what the dark background does to your coloring. Here's the die cut all colored and ready to go on the card. Before I foam mount it, I went to stamp the same image onto the background panel using watermark ink for a tone-on-tone look. This will add some interest to the panel and will also help fill the empty space at the bottom. Next, I'm foam mounting the die cut onto the panel, and I'm going outside the edges just a little bit. I'm also going to trim the excess image and reuse that large leaf and adhere it in another spot on the card. There's no need to toss it, we can still use it. I have already created a sentiment for this project. I picked one that reads, "Sincere thanks," and I heat embossed it in same embossing powder on the same color cardstock as my background. The sentiment comes from the Bitty Thanks and Gratitude stamp set. I trimmed it to a skinny strip and foam mounted on the card, overlapping the floral cluster just slightly. Finally, I created an A2 white card base. I trimmed the front panel to 4 1/4 by 5 1/4 inches, and I'm adding it to the card base with the help of foam adhesive. You can skip the foam adhesive and use regular adhesive if you'd like to keep the card on the flatter side. Finally, if you want to add something a little extra to the card, you can embellish it with your favorite dots or drops or gems or jewels. I hope you'll give this idea a try. If you do, please share online and tag us on social media. We always love seeing what you guys are making. Subscribe now not to miss any new card making tutorials. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.